Good morning, everyone. The webinar will begin shortly. There will be no audio until the webinar begins at 10 a.m. Thank you for your patience. Again, the webinar will begin shortly. There will be no audio until the webinar begins at 10 a.m. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar regarding the fiscal year 2022 to 23 continued funding application for California State Preschool Program contractors. This webinar is being presented by the Early Education Division, EED, on Monday, November 15th, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Next slide, please. Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Jackie Luong. I am an analyst with the Administration and Fiscal Services here at the California Department of Education in the Early Education Division. Presenting along with me myself today is Crystal Devlin, Education Administrator for the Program Quality Implementation Office at the EED, also known as the PQI Office. Mai Zhang, Staff Services Analyst for the PQI Office, will be facilitating the presentation, responding to your questions in the Q&A section of this webinar. Is with Richard Miller, Consultant in the PQI Office, Danielle Davis and Eddie Tanimoto, Consultants in the EED Policy Office, Alan Lynch with the Early Education and Fiscal Services Office, and Jane Liang and Carly Nodohara from the Child Development Management Information System Office, also known as the CDMIS Office. Crystal and I will also respond to questions throughout the Q&A feature when we are not presenting. Our team will do our best to respond to all your questions. For those we may not currently have an answer for, we will take back and respond in the near future via the CDE EED Frequently Asked Questions webpage. Also, please note that the chat feature is disabled during the webinar. Therefore, if you have any questions, please remember to use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. On this slide is a photo collage of children from Hayward Unified School District. The center of the collage reads, "Everyone belongs, todos somos unidos." Next slide, please. Today, we'll be providing you an overview of the Management Bulletin, MB 21-14, regarding the fiscal year 22 to 23 continued funding application for the California State Preschool Program contractors, including the statutory background for the CFA. We will provide you with application updates, including what's new for fiscal year 22 to 23, and we will discuss how to submit the fiscal year 22-23 CFA. We will then walk through the instructions for completing the CFA and provide you with contact information for any questions or technical issues that may arise in completing and submitting the CFA. Then, as time allows, we respond verbally to more frequently asked questions that are being posted in the Q&A feature of this webinar and close out for the morning. Now over to Crystal to provide any overview of the MB 21-14 and some of the instructions for completing and submitting the 22-23 CFA.
Thank you, Jackie, and welcome everyone who has joined us today. Management Bulletin MB 21-14 offers existing California Department of Education, CDE, Early Education Division, EED contractors the opportunity to request continued funding for fiscal year FY 2022-23. This Management Bulletin supersedes the continued funding application information found in Management Bulletin 20-16. In order to be considered for continued funding for fiscal year 2022-23, CSPP contractors must complete and submit the fiscal year 2022-23 CFA on or before December 17th, 2021. The complete fiscal year 2022-23 CFA application package is available on the CFA webpage at https://www.cde.co ca.gov/sp/sc/ci/CFA forms 2223.asp. It is really important for each CSPP contractor to review this information as soon as possible to ensure appropriate time and resources are reserved to complete and submit the fiscal year 22-23 CFA in a timely manner. Next slide, please. The statutory background for the CFA includes the California Code of Regulations, Title 5, 5 CCR, Division 1, Chapter 19, Subchapter 1, Article 5, Section 18010, which requires contractors who intend to accept the offer to continue providing services in the subsequent contract period to respond to a continued funding application request in accordance with the instructions and timelines specified in the request. Failure to respond within the timelines specified in the continued funding application request shall constitute notification to the Child Development Division of the contractor's intent to discontinue services at the end of the current contract period. Next slide, please. As of July 1, application updates that are new for fiscal year 22-23. As of July 1, 2021, the California Department of Education administers only the California State Preschool Program, the CSPP. All other programs are administered by the California Department of Social Services, the CDSS. The information provided in this webinar regarding the continued funding application for fiscal year 22-23 is for CSPP contractors only. Also new for fiscal year 22-23, CSPP contractors who apply for and are approved for continued funding through the CFA process will not need to sign a CSPP contract to provide services for fiscal year 22-23. As CSPP contracts approved for continued funding will be automatically renewed in accordance with all applicable federal and state laws, as well as all CSPP funding terms and conditions and program requirements that will be incorporated into the subsequent CSPP contracts. By signing the CFA, your agency indicates that it wishes to automatically renew its current CSPP contract for the next fiscal year and is willing to and does accept all of the terms and conditions of such contract, which will be provided to all CSPP contractors being renewed for funding no later than June 1, 2022. CSPP contractors may reject the terms of the new CSPP contract by providing written notice to the CDE no later than July 1, 2022. Instructions on how to provide written notice of rejection of the terms of the new CSPP contract will be provided with the proposed contracts. Because of this change, you will notice that there are some additional forms to complete and submit with the fiscal year 2022-23 CFA. These forms would usually be submitted by the CSPP contractor when they sign and return the fiscal year 22-23 contract. Since that is no longer applicable for fiscal year 2022-23, those forms are now included as part of the CFA package. Next slide, please. CSPP contractors must review the instructions prior to completing the CFA for fiscal year 2022-23. The CFA may be submitted electronically, by email, or physically by mail. Download the CFA package, including the required attachments, from https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/CFA CFA forms 2223.ASP and save your own personal copy. Complete and sign your saved CFA, including the required attachments. If submitting a physical copy of the application, print all pages single-sided only. The CFA may be signed and submitted to the CDE electronically or in physical copy. Instructions to provide a digital signature are located on each applicable section of the instructions document. Next slide, please. The 2022-23 CFA is due to the CDE Early Education Division on December 17th, 2021 by 5 p.m. We are strongly encouraging that CFAs are submitted electronically. CSPP contractors may submit their application electronically with digital signatures or by printing, signing, and scanning the CFA and all required attachments. For either method of electronic submission, email the completed application to cfa@cde.ca.gov. Alternately, CSPP contractors may submit a hard copy of the CFA with original signatures in blue ink by mail. Hard copies of the CFA must be mailed to Continued Funding Application, California Department of Education, Early Education Division, 1430 N Street, Suite 3410, Sacramento, California, 95814-5901. And Maya is putting all of our links and addresses and email addresses in the chat feature of this webinar. Again, regardless of how the CFA is submitted, it must be received by the CDE EED no later than 5 p.m. on December 17th, 2021. Next slide, please. Okay, we will now go through the instructions for each section of the continued funding application. In section 1, you will provide the CSPP contractor information. Once this section has been completed, the header on all pages of the application will automatically populate with the legal name of the CSPP contractor, the headquartered county, and the vendor number. For section 2, contract types, you will check all applicable boxes to indicate the types of CSPP that the contractor intends to administer for fiscal year 2022-23. In checking the boxes, the CSPP contractor agrees, if approved for continued funding, to continue implementation of the CSPP with funds provided by the CDE. The CSPP contract types include 1, the CSPP full day, full year contract type. 2, the CSPP part day, part year contract type. And 3, the CSPP Family Child Care Home Education Network contract type. In section 3, the CSPP contractors, officers, and board of directors section, be sure to respond to all questions related to the contractors, officers, and board of directors as applicable. Next slide, please. Section 4 is the program narrative section of the continued funding application. Here you will indicate if the contractor does or does not have programmatic or minimum days of operation, MDO changes for fiscal year 2022-23. For any programmatic or MDO changes, complete and submit the program narrative change form, Form EED 3704A. All contractors must submit the fiscal year 2022-23 program calendar, Form EED 9730, for each type of CSPP operated. Again, full day, full year, or part day, part year. Next slide, please. Okay, Section 5, CSPP personnel certifications provides the CDE EED information regarding the CSPP contractor's authorized representative that is completing and submitting the fiscal year 2022-23 CFA. This form must be completed and signed by the CSPP contractor's authorized representative. To digitally sign the form for electronic submission, left-click the signature field and follow the on-screen instructions. Alternatively, the form can be printed, physically signed, and scanned for electronic submission. If submitting a physical copy of the application, signatures must be signed in blue ink. The authorized representative is the person who has the authority to sign and engage in a contractual relationship with the CDE. For Section 6, subcontract certification, if the CSPP contractor does not have subcontractors, you will check the box indicating that the CSPP contractor operates without the use of a subcontractor. If the CSPP contractor does have subcontractors that have previously been approved by the CDE EED, check all applicable boxes in this section. CSPP contractors who have been approved to subcontract CSPP services will need to complete and submit Form EED 3704B. This form is available on the CFA webpage at https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/ci/CFA forms 2223.asp. Again, this must be completed and signed by the CSPP contractor's authorized representative, and to digitally sign the form for electronic submission, left-click the signature field and follow the on-screen instructions. Alternatively, the form can be printed, physically signed, and scanned for electronic submission. If submitting a physical copy of the application, signatures must be signed in blue ink. For Section 7, CSPP contractor certification, the authorized representative certifies that they are authorized to execute the continued funding application, has the supervisory authority over the California State Preschool Program, has actual knowledge of the information in the application, and certifies that the information in the application is true and correct. Again, new this year, the authorized representative agrees that by signing the CFA, they are agreeing to renew the CSPP contract under the terms and conditions that will be applicable to fiscal year 2022-23, and that such contract will be in effect as of July 1st, 2022, unless the CSPP contractor submits written notice of rejection of the contract to the CDE prior to the effective date of the contract on July 1, 2022. Instructions on how to provide written notice of rejection of the terms of the new fiscal year 2022-23 contract will be provided in forthcoming communication on or before June 1st, 2022 to CSPP contractors. This form must also be completed and signed by the CSPP contractor's authorized representative as previously described. Now, back over to Jackie to provide instructions regarding requirements for contractor updates and certification to the Child Development Management Information System, or CDMIS.
Thank you, Crystal. In Section 8, certification of information in the Child Development Management Information System, also known as the CDMIS. Information is provided regarding the requirements for CSPP contractors to review and update all information in the CDMIS and certify under penalty of perjury that the information in CDMIS is complete and accurate as the date of certification. This update includes the name and contact information for the executive director and program directors, location of offices, location, license number, and licensed capacity of facility sites and or family childcare home providers who serve children through a CSPP FC CHEN and the number of children enrolled. Next slide, please. In continuation to Section 8, certification of information in the CDMIS, the information in the CDMIS becomes part of the agency's contract. Complete and accurate information is critical to the function of the CSPP and the maintenance of your agency's CSPP contract. Incomplete or inaccurate information in the CDMIS can result in an audit finding at the state level and a finding of non-compliance for your agency. Maintenance of complete and accurate information in the CDMIS is your responsibility. To access this information, the person logging on to the CDMIS must be a super user. Only super users can access the Update Agency Information function within the CDMIS. To review the information and submit changes, log on to the CDMIS at https://www.cde.ca.gov/cdmis/default.aspx. From the main menu, select the function Update Agency Information and click the Submit button. Review all the following information and update as applicable. Add/edit Program Director Information. Add/edit Family Child Care Home Network, also known as the FC CHEN information. Add/edit sites/offices. Update the site license information. Update number of children served by contracts at sites/offices to reflect services at the date of the CDMIS updates. Once all of the information has been reviewed and all changes has been submitted, regardless of whether the changes has been approved by the assigned EED PQI office consultant or are still pending approval, complete and sign Section 8, certification of CSPP contractor information in the CDMIS on page 8 of the CFA. Alternatively, generate and print the Agency Information Certification Form. Do not generate the Agency Information Certification Form until all the information above has been reviewed and any changes needed have been submitted. To generate this form, scroll down to the bottom of the Update Agency Information webpage and click the Generate Certification Form button. When the form is generated, print it by using the browser's print function. The CSPP contractor's authorized representative must sign the form. The signed form must be returned with the CFA. Application will be considered incomplete without either the certification of the CSPP contractor information page completed or the agency information certification form. All changes, submits, adds, updates, or deletes will remain pending until the CSPP contractor's assigned EED PQI office consultant reviews and approves or denies the changes. Ongoing updates. In addition to the annual review of information as part of the CFA process, CSPP contractors are required to submit changes to executive director information, program director information, and site/office information, site name, physical address, and license information only as changes occur. Next slide, please. Section 9, required attachments. All attachments must be completed and attached to the application as applicable to the contractor. These attachments include A, Fiscal Year 22-23 Program Calendar, also known as the EED-9730. B, Payee Dated Record, also known as the STD 204, it's for non-public agencies only. C, Payee Data Record Supplement, also known as the STD 205. It's also for non-public agencies only. D, Secretary of State for non-public agencies only. E, verification of school district name and address. F, program narrative change, also known as the EED-3704A. G, subcontractor certification form, also known as the EED-3704B. H, California Civil Rights Law certification, also known as the CO-005. I, contractor certification clauses, also known as the CCC 04/2017. J, federal certification, also known as the CO8. And K, public agencies must include board resolution or minutes of meeting reflecting authorization of signature on this document and a delegation of authority if applicable. Next slide, please. Section 10 is the CFA checklist. The checklist must be submitted with a CFA package. The items in bold are required for signature. Check all of the boxes for documents submitted, and if submitting the completed CFA by mail, assemble the application in a page number order as indicated. Next slide, please. Submit questions regarding to the application process or the automatic renewal of approved funding requests to the CFA team by email at cfa@cde.ca.gov. Please include your name and phone number on all inquiries. For programmatic questions regarding the CFA, contact your assigned EED Program Quality Implementation Office Regional Consultant. The EED PQI Office Regional Consultant Directory can be accessed at https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/cd/ci/assignments.asp. And for any fiscal related questions regarding the CFA, contact your assigned EED Nutrition Fiscal Services Apportionment Analyst. The Fiscal Apportionment Analyst directory can be accessed at https://www.cde.ca.gov/FG/AA/FAAD.ASP. Please be sure to select the Fiscal Apportionment Analyst for the CDE, as the directory includes contact information for both the CDE and California Department of Social Services Fiscal Apportionment Analysts. Now back to Crystal to respond to some of the questions we have received.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, so we have quite a few questions coming into the Q&A, and I'm going to answer as many of those as I can, and I may be calling on other folks from our Q&A team to respond as well. So one of the questions that I've seen a couple of times in the Q&A feature is regarding the new federal Juneteenth holiday, and would that require a change to your MDO? So if you are going to be taking that holiday and it's going to change your minimum days of operation, so say for instance, right now your MDO is 246 days, and you're going to close on Juneteenth, and you're not going to open a different day, so it's going to change your MDO to 245 days, then yes, that would be an MDO change, and you would need to submit the program narrative change form along with the 22-23 program calendar. I do want to emphasize that all programs, regardless of whether or not there is a change to the minimum days of operation, must submit the calendar along with the CFA package. It just may not require the program narrative change. Okay. There's a question around how will you know if you are a contractor who needs to complete the CFA or it will be renewed automatically. So all state preschool program contractors are required to submit complete and submit the continued funding application. That is required every year in order to be considered for continued funding for the subsequent contract year. The difference this year is that you will complete the CFA, and by completing it, submitting it, and it being approved by the CDE, you will not need to return a signed contract once you receive that for fiscal year 2022-23. Okay, excuse me. And we have a question around universal transitional kindergarten. So there is CSPP located on that is operated by a local education agency working on the plans for the transition to UTK. Should we submit the CFA with how we are running the program now and plan on running next year and submit a revision if changes made on the LEA affect the CSPP program? So if you are aware now that there's going to be changes to your CSPP because of the universal transitional kindergarten, that should be included as a program narrative change with your fiscal year 2022-23 continued funding application. If you're not aware of any changes that might be made and those occur, say, later in 2022-23, then you would submit that program narrative change to your assigned ED program quality implementation office consultant at the time that those changes are going to be made. Okay. Let me see. So a few questions around board approvals. And so with the application for continued funding being automatically renewing the new fiscal year contract, does this need to be approved by our board of directors prior to submitting the CFA? So if you have a board of directors, yes, it is a requirement that that the CFA is approved by your board of directors prior to submission to the Department of Education. Okay. At my site, I have a full day program that runs 248 days and a half day program with both AM and PM classes that run 175 days. Do I need to submit 2 calendars? Previously, we only submitted the 1 calendar for the full 248 days. So yes, you would need to submit a calendar for your full day program and a calendar for your part day program. Okay. And then I have on page 5 to 6 of the CFA instructions under section 3, it states that this information is only required for non-local education agencies. Am I understanding that if my agency is a local education agency, that I do not need to complete this section? And that is correct. So that
Hey everyone, sounds like we may have lost Crystal momentarily, but good morning everybody. As I'm looking to kind of fill in until Crystal can join, I'll look at some of the other questions that have come into the Q&A. Let's see.
Hey, Steve, we've gotten a couple questions about digital signatures, so can I just respond to one of those?
Absolutely. Thank you, Danielle.
No problem. So the questions were, can I submit the CFA with a digital signature, or do I have to submit with a wet signature? The answer is yes, you can submit the CFA with a digital signature. Alternatively, if you prefer a wet signature, you can submit the CFA electronically with scanned copies of the physically signed pages, and that's also acceptable. So either way you choose to do it is good for the CFA. Thanks, Steve.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. As I look around to the team, if there's other questions that we want to answer live.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm not sure where I was. I got completely kicked out. And I heard Steve taking over there, but I'm back. And so I reiterate that we are taking many of these questions back, and we'll review them, and we will be adding them to the ED FAQ webpage in the very near future. Hopefully we can have that done right away, because I know that time is of the essence for all of you as you are completing your continued funding applications. So I'm going to just run back here to the Q&As because I kind of got, as I said, knocked out, and I want to make sure I'm have the current questions. If there's anybody else on in the Q&A team that would like to answer questions live, please go ahead and request to answer those live.
Crystal, I see a few questions about the contract or vendor number that is to be entered. Is it a contract number, the current year contract number that needs to be indicated in the CFA, or is that a vendor number?
So sorry, let me answer that. I asked Kyra about the CO8, which is the contract number section. She said that it won't be, they will just leave it blank for now, since contracts won't provide it until we get a request. So for now, when they complete the CO8, she has stated that they just leave the contract number part on the section number, the contract number section on CO8 as blank.
Okay, team, I'm going to hop on and answer another question that we're getting a lot of. Is the question of, is there a minimum days of operation that are required? There's a lot of questions asking, did the addition of Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday change this? And I would just like to let everyone know that the statutory requirement for minimum days of operation has not changed. Even with the addition of a new federal holiday, the part-day state preschool program is still required to operate a minimum of 175 days per year. And then the full-day state preschool program is required to operate for a minimum of 246 days per year, unless the contract specifies a lower number of days of operation. So unless it's approved through your contract, those are the required minimum days of operation. And that has not changed just because there is a new federal holiday.
Thank you, Danielle. Much appreciated. Okay. So I saw a few people asked about the board of directors, and the form doesn't have enough space for them to include each member of their board of directors. So in that case, please go ahead and just add an additional page to include all of your board board of directors members' information on it and attach it behind that form. And then, so we want to, there have been some questions around, is this going to be ongoing in regards to the auto renewal, and will we have continued funding application every year? So for the time being, we do anticipate that there will be a continued funding application expected each year. And we want to let everybody know that the reason why we are instituting the auto renewal process was because we were not receiving contracts, signed contracts timely enough from some contractors, and it was creating a delay in payments for the subsequent contract year. So it was not to abandon this process and does not eliminate the requirement for specific certifications necessary to the CFA process. It's just to make sure that contracts are able to get into the hands of the CSPP contractor in a timely manner, and that our fiscal services is able to make payments to our contractors in a timely manner. We definitely don't want payments to be delayed. Okay. And I'm seeing additional questions around copies of the board resolution, what is needed here. Again, this is typically a letter on the agency letterhead regarding the board meeting, and that the board does agree to the renewal of the contract and approves the continued funding application, signed by all of your members of your board of directors. Should we apply a different continued funding application for CCTR and CSPP? So the answer to yes. So the CSPP is administered by the California Department of Education, and your CSPP continued funding application will be sent to us. For your CCTR contracts, you will be working with the Department of Social Services on that. And we understand they expect to release their continued funding application soon. So nothing related to the CCTR contracts or any contract type other than the state preschool program should be submitted to the CDE. So again, only the CSPP continued funding application should be submitted to the Department of Education. I have a question here about when will we hear from the CDSS to submit their continued funding application. Please email the Department of Social Services related to any contract types other than state preschool program for anything, but definitely for your CFA as well. I have a question. Do you need to submit the board agenda and minutes? So there's in the application, in the instructions, it says that you need to submit either a board resolution or your meeting minutes. And so if you have, if you're going to submit the meeting minutes where you discuss the continued funding application and it's being approved by your board, then you submit the minutes and they should be signed by all of the board members. Okay, so I see Miriam McNamara regarding the attachment for the Secretary of State item. You followed the link and quite what is needed. So Miriam, if you could please just type in the Q&A again. Is it that you could not, that the link wasn't working and the document didn't open, or if it is a question related to that? Okay, so we have one here with timeline to get the board approval and or the board meeting and get everything signed is very tight. We send in the CFA with board approval to follow. So what we would say here, and we do understand that this happens, is that we would ask that you send to our CFA inbox at the cfa@cde.ca.gov a request for an extension of time to submit the continued funding application. When you do that, you're very specific as to the reason why you were unable to get board approval and the reason why you need an extension, and then it must be approved by the Department of Education. So it's really important that you send this to us right away so that we can approve it before the due date of the continued funding application. And then we may email you with follow-up questions. So again, getting that into the CFA inbox as soon as possible is really important. Okay, I'm just going through questions. And if any of our other Q&A analysts see any that they want to respond to live, please do so. Okay, I do see one here. When updating CDMIS for this CSPP continued funding application, do we delete the other contract types listed under the same type? Some of our sites serve CSPP and CCTR contracts. Please do not delete any of the other contract types listed in CDMIS because it is currently being utilized by the Department of Social Services. And so it's important that all of your other contract type information remains in CDMIS. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I'm seeing a lot of questions around not being able to get the CFA signed by the. Again, just to reiterate that you would need to send in a request. Please do not send it the CFA in without board approval. Please go ahead and send in that request for an extension to the due date to the CFA inbox at cfa@cde.ca.gov. Into us as soon as possible because we need to get that approved for you prior to December 17th. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of questions around that. Yeah, we do understand that for many of our LEAs that the timeline is going to be tight. Okay.
Hey, Crystal, as I'm looking at some of the questions that are in here, it looks like maybe there's some confusion or some clarification needed on who needs to submit, submit the board approval documents.
So the
specifically, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Authorized representative that is signing the continued funding application would submit the board approval along with the application, along with the continued funding application. Does that answer your question?
I think what I'm seeing in here are, is it public agencies that submit board approval? Is it all agencies? Is it LEAs? Those are the kinds of questions that I'm seeing here.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So, so LEAs should have a board of directors, and they would submit the board resolution. And not all public agencies have a board of directors, but if they do, then they would need approval and board resolution. Okay. And we have a question here. Did I just hear that each individual board member is required to actually sign the resolution. It can't be a resolution at the board level and then documented. You need wet signatures. Okay, I do apologize for that confusion. So your board resolution can be signed by the superintendent or the person that has been delegated authority to sign the board resolution. Want for meeting minutes is present for the meeting would just sign that, and they don't need to be, it could be a scanned copy. It doesn't need to be an electronically submitted. It does not have to be like a wet signature mailed to us.
Crystal, for
Yes.
section 9K for the public agencies must include board resolution or minutes of the meeting. Those are only for public agencies, not for non-public agencies, correct?
Correct. However, if a non-public agency, a community-based organization does have a board of directors, then their board should be included in the process of approving the continued funding application.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Leslie Nelson, the office is governed by the superintendent of schools, not the Board of Education. Can the CFA be signed by the superintendent's designee? And yes, Leslie, that is acceptable. And so Jacqueline Torres asked, do we need to provide a date that we foresee the CFA being completed when asking for an extension? And I would say yes. So you would want to include in the extension, again, the reason you're requesting the extension, the date, if possible, of the next Board of Directors meeting, and the anticipated date of submitting the CFA. And Jennifer Roca, I see that when you click on the links in the instruction page, it says it is page not found. So I will work with our coordinator today, and we'll go through and we'll look on and double check all of the links and make sure they're working. And if they are not, we will get those fixed right away. I see questions around, will the recording of the webinar be shared? We will share it as soon as possible. Do know that we have to go through a transcription process, which takes a little bit of time, but I know that Stephen Profiter, our division director, has requested that that be expedited. So we will be working on that and getting the recording of this webinar up as soon as possible.
I'll just jump in here quickly, Crystal. So yeah, we will post as quickly as possible. I think based on a lot of the questions that are coming in around, Board of Directors, what's required and all that, I think we'll prioritize some FAQs around that first, because it seems like that's that seems to be a priority question, and having something in writing is certainly a nice thing to have.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, we will definitely start working on the FAQs today. I see that that's going to be something we definitely need to prioritize. And then we will also prioritize getting this webinar recording on our website. Please also continue to send in your questions to our CFA inbox so that we can add them to our frequently asked questions. Again, the email address is cfa@cde.ca.gov. Thank you, Mai. Mai added that again to the chat for all of you. And we are getting a little bit short on time here. So I am going to ask Mai to take us to the next slide. And we are coming to the end of our presentation on the continued funding application for fiscal year 2022-23. We want to thank you all for joining us today and for all of your dedication and important work on behalf of California's children and families. And we will leave the Q&A up for you here for a few more minutes, and we will download all of the questions that have come in and sort those and start working on adding them to our FAQ page throughout today and the rest of this week. So again, thank you all and have a wonderful day.